Maybe it's my laptop.
Uh-huh. Okay, then is
My
everything
voice is
okay?
okay though, right? Is my voice okay?
Yes, to me, yes. And is everything on your side all right?
Inshallah, yes.
Good, thank you, Abdullah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we can start, inshallah. As you know, and needless to introduce Dr. Summaya, she is well known at the English Language Institute and the Academic Writing Center. She is a writing specialist. Dr. Summaya is a language instructor and a Cambridge certified teacher trainer and a member of the Curriculum and Test Development Unit at the ELI. She has postgraduate certificate, Trinity certificate, and an MA in TESOL. Dr. Samay also has the University of Harvard certificate in differentiated language instruction and inclusiveness in learning. Additionally, she was awarded various professional certificates in language teaching and further education teaching from highly reputed and recognized UK institutions. Dr. Samaya is equally empowered with advanced understanding in standardized and highly ethical language teaching and facilitation of students' learning. As a PhD candidate, I'm sure that this is a little bit old piece of information. With a focus on academic writing, she aspires to empower the students with the essential skills in this spectrum. As I wrote in the chat box, you can find a lot of workshops for Dr. Samaya if you go to the AWC's YouTube channel, and she presented 5 academic writing workshops before. They are in the chat box. I'll repeat them from time to time. Floor is yours, Dr. Samaya. I'm sure that everybody will enjoy it. And I forgot to thank everybody for attending and participating and future interaction, inshallah. The floor is yours, Dr. Samaya.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. I hope you find this interesting and inspiring. Okay, so it's about teaching writing in large classes. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to look at the significance of writing, and also we're going to look at some of the effective and influential teaching methods as suggested and recommended by research in teaching writing. We're going to also look at the challenges that we all face in our classrooms. Because obviously we all have big classrooms, 25 plus students in one single classroom, and there are some suggested teaching points to consider, and also I'm going to suggest some writing tasks to be used and utilized inside classrooms. And finally, we're going to look at some assessment and feedback techniques and methods, inshallah. Okay, so yeah, writing is a very important skill for anybody in the field of academia, and it's also important for our university students. It's just important for us as human beings. Writing is a life skill. Without writing, we get nowhere. We use writing in our daily lives. We write emails to each other. We write our shopping lists. We write phone numbers. We write text messages to each other. So writing is just part of our life. It's just part and parcel of our life. So it's a life skill for us, and it is, of course, it's highly personal because we all write what we want to write. Actually, it can be something that has got to do with our profession, or it can be something that has got to do with our education, or something to do with our family life, etc. So it's highly personal. It is what we want to say and what we want to communicate. It is multifaceted. Writing is multifaceted because it engages. Writing engages a lot of other skills like cognitive skills, like We think about something, we phrase it in our minds, we rephrase it, we choose the right words, we choose a sentence structure that is appropriate for what we want to say. We structure our writing. So it's about a lot of things. Writing is about a lot of things. So when we want to write, we have to give consideration to a lot of things. We have to consider the person who's going to read our writing. We also have to consider the message that we want to communicate. We have to consider the context and its requirements. And we have to consider also not just the person who's receiving our messages, but the register, the formality of the language that we need to use in writing. So it is highly multifaceted. Writing is really, really important. I mean, research says writing does widen our knowledge scope, and it does sharpen our imagination. So with writing, because when we write something, it is like we go back and read it, it's like somebody else has written it. I mean, I don't know if you have tried that yourself. As teachers, we do write a lot of reflective logs, and when we go back and read those logs, it sounds like somebody else has written them. So it's like a second eyes looking at that. So it is pretty much reflective, and it's pretty much exploratory, and it is pretty much cognitive, highly cognitive. It's a means of language learning and also language assessment. As students write, as they're writing, they're making a lot of decisions about the spelling. They're making a lot of decisions about the word choice, how they want to express themselves, the degree of the degree of formality of the language and the register. So they make a lot of decisions about a lot of things before they start writing. So it is not just the writing is not just a means of assessment. It is also a way of learning, because sometimes they have learned. Sometimes a student has learned a new word, so they keep writing that word until they have mastered its spelling and its usage, for example. Of course, writing is very important for academic success and academic achievement. Writing is really, really important for academic achievement. Without writing, tutors will not know how much knowledge you have acquired. Without having to write assignments and courseworks, we don't get grades, we don't get to graduate, we don't get certified, etc., etc. So writing is really a vital tool for academic achievement and success. Okay, I've lost my slides. Okay, yes. So there are some practices that are recommended by research to be used inside the classroom for our teaching to be more effective and more impactful, and for the learning experience to be more successful. First and foremost is needs analysis. Needs analysis is something that's really important. We need to know where each and every student stands. Obviously, when it comes to large classrooms, it's a bit tricky and it's a bit challenging. But we always find ways. As teachers, we always find ways, and I'm going to suggest some of the ways to do that. Actually, the way I use with my students is one of the technical applications, Padlet. It helps me a lot with identifying learning needs for my students, especially when it comes to writing. Cooperative and group work, because obviously we do better when we are in a group. People learn from each other, and people do better when they work together. So working in a group is really important, because people get to transfer and share knowledge when they work in a group, and people get to sort of learn from each other. Maybe somebody knows a word the other person doesn't. So working in a group creates some kind of a community inside the classroom. People learn from each other, and people help each other and support each other and foster each other's learning. So yeah, I mean, having group works is something that is one of the strongest tools in improving writing for students, especially when it comes to large classrooms, because sometimes we cannot handle each and everything inside a large classroom. So we get stronger students, maybe more confident students to help us out. So if we pair them, like pair work and group work, can be one of the most effective classroom management, especially in large classrooms. And especially when we sort of create a sense of community inside the classroom, when the students correct each other in good spirit, and when the students help and support each other to achieve and get better. And of course, when it comes to writing, we have to integrate the other skills. Meaning, learning writing doesn't occur. It doesn't happen in a vacuum of nothing. It happens when people have got a background of what they want to write about. It happens when the students have read about something they want to write about. It happens when they have listened about a certain topic. It happens when they have experienced a certain thing. So there's always a context, and a context is really important. So they integrate listening when they're writing. They integrate listening. They integrate reading. They integrate having learned. They integrate previous knowledge. Having learned about something from somebody from the internet, having watched about a certain topic, having watched a video about it. So there is a lot of integration of different skills, different many skills. And that is why we should expect writing to happen in a vacuum. It does relate to the other language skills, and it does relate to previous knowledge, and it does relate to previous knowledge of the topic they want to write about and a context. Obviously, using authentic materials is also very interesting because it will help students a lot. Because if we show a video, probably about a topic, then they will acquire knowledge, and also a video will give them exposure to the type of language that is needed and required for this particular writing task. So, say for example, they watch a video about the history of Jeddah, for example, then they will know that they will have to write, they'll have to sort of narrate so the kind of writing that might be required with this particular video can be narrative. The genre can be narrative. So they will get to know the factual facts about the history of Jeddah, for example, and use that as a context to build on new and use the new knowledge and write something about Jeddah, for example. So having authentic materials, reading, so, for example, an article from the newspapers, watching a video, reading a text in a book, or reading a magazine, reading something in the magazine. So using authentic material is something that's really important. They have to see the relevance between what they are required to write, between the topic they are required to write about, and what they are being shown. For example, if we want to teach them, if we want to if we want them to describe some kind of a chemical procedure, for example, they will have to have read about it first, and they will have to experience it first, and then be able to write about it. So it doesn't. We have to have authentic material. They have to see the relevance between the required task and what they are learning. So we face a lot of challenges, and probably my list is not exhaustive. Maybe you can also share some ideas when it comes to the challenges, because this is something that we experience on a daily basis. The minute we walk inside the classroom, we feel the challenges, especially when it comes to large classrooms. According to Monks and Schmidt, both the teaching quality and the student's achievement of optimum learning are highly influenced by the class size. Obviously, the teacher will be like divided among like 50 students, 40 students, 30 students. Each and every student needs his or her individual attention. They need our attention. They need to be supported. They need to. They need for their learning needs to be identified and catered for. So to give individualized attention in a big classroom is something that is next to impossible. It is really hard and challenging. But obviously, yeah, we need to find ways. Obviously, with large classrooms, there will always be disruptive noise and behavior. Classroom management will be a big challenge. We need, for some time, but probably we need them to listen to us, at least listen to instructions. We need to check that they have understood our instructions. So if people are like, if some students are talking, then that is disruptive, and it's gonna affect the flow of the classroom and the flow of the whole lesson, and it's gonna affect obviously our classroom management skills. And obviously, if you get a large group in a class, there will be like highly mixed abilities. You get, I like to call them maybe most able students and less able, more able and less able students, or more confident students and less confident students. So you get those whose language is really good and they can do better than others, and you get those who are still, you know, people learn at different paces. This is factual. So mixed ability is a big challenge, because when we are planning a lesson and we've got our students' learning needs in our mind, it's going to be a challenge to cater for each and every student. It's going to be really challenged. But yet we can deal with that through planning differentiated tasks. The nature of writing itself is challenging. Writing is multifaceted, as we said. We have to not just brainstorm ideas, we have to also think of the audience, who is going to read what we are going to write. And we have to think of the choice of words. We have to think of the register. We have to think of the context in which we are writing. Is it highly academic? Is it highly professional? Is it and the nature of the task itself? Am I writing an email to a friend? Am I writing just a shopping list to myself? Do I need to write each and every word? Does each and every word need to be spelled correctly? So all these ideas and all these tasks have to be thought about, well thought of actually, before we start writing. And also the ideas need to be structured in a way that needs that helps our readers to follow our ideas. And we also need to think of cohesive devices. We have to think of appropriate linking words. We have to think of all that. So the nature of writing itself is really challenging. And teaching all that, of course, is a big challenge. And the task itself, the nature of the task itself, the task management. Do I need it inside my class? Do I need it? Does it have to be a pair work? Does it have to be group work? Can I handle it all myself? So the nature of the task itself, I mean, it needs a lot of thinking, it needs a lot of planning, it needs a lot of time to be carefully planned. And how to manage it. I mean, how do I pair the students, and does the space inside the classroom allow all that? Sometimes the classroom itself, the space is tight and it doesn't allow all that. Can I move freely from one pair to another? That is something to think of. Provision of individualized attention and feedback. I want to give feedback to each and every student. I mean, sometimes we don't have enough time to prepare the students for the tests and the exams. And we need to make sure that they have achieved the learning goals, and they are able enough to perform in the exam. So that is also a challenge. Resources sometimes are a challenge. Resources, sometimes we're limited with resources. Sometimes there is a certain writing task in the book, and you get some tasks in the book that can help the students get ready for the actual task, but they're not well scaffolded, and they don't match all the learning needs of the students, and they don't cater for all the learning needs. So probably somebody is still struggling with spelling of certain words, and we expect them to write a task like a descriptive task or a narrative task. So resources sometimes are not enough. They are limited. And the physical atmosphere inside the classroom, as we said, sometimes it's too tight, and I cannot pair the students, I cannot group them in a way that can sort of help them achieve the task, or do the task in a good way, or be successful in doing the task. So this is my list of the challenges, but probably my list is not exhaustive, as I've said. So probably maybe you can add to my list. I don't know. I do invite my audience to add ideas, and I've got my eye on the chat box. Um, so techniques and ways and methods and the things that we can do sort of to help ourselves and help our students. Probably one of the first things that we should always think of is we have to maximize engagement opportunities. So we need to keep them occupied, and we need to keep them busy. We need to keep them engaged and involved all the time. So obviously, lecturing will never be constructive. It will never be. It will never be successful. We shouldn't. Like what do we mean by active and passive learning? Sometimes I think pretty much I mean by saying this, pretty much I mean the product and process approach. So the product approach can be passive sometimes, because we provide them with a model and we want them to produce a model, a writing task that is quite similar to the model. And so there's no a lot of work happening in the cognition of the students. There's no a lot of thinking, a lot of planning happening. So we give them a model, and they just produce something that is similar to that. Obviously, there will be a lot of work pertaining to the choice of words and the grammar, and the grammar has to be accurate, the vocab has to be accurate, etc., etc. But yet, I mean, if we take them through the process of planning and drafting and drafting again, etc., until they get it all right, then that is more active learning of writing. And obviously, we have to differentiate the tasks. I mean, one size does not fit all. That is something that we all know. So we have to because some students are really strong and they finish really early. So we have to have tasks for them. We have to have tasks that are a little bit challenging for them. Some students do need more time, and sometimes they need to sort of sometimes they need to some I don't know, somebody's mic is on. Okay. So yeah, I mean, some students need to, for example, they need to improve their spelling and their sentence structure and other elements of writing, like subject-verb agreement, punctuation, etc., etc., before they can write a well-structured paragraph. Before they can produce a paragraph with a topic, sentence, a conclusion, supporting sentences, for example. So we need to cater for all that. We need to think of all that. Again, opportunities for collaboration and cooperation. That is something that will keep them engaged, will create a sense of community inside the classroom, as we said, and will give them an opportunity to help and support each other, and will also give responsibility to some of the students inside the classroom. So if we give them responsibility, then they will have a sense of achievement, a sense of ownership of learning. And getting students into the habit of writing, because writing is usually sort of alienated to some extent, because they're not willing to write. Obviously, because writing is challenging. Even expert writers find it challenging. So if we sort of get them into the habit of writing by just sometimes, I'm going to suggest some of the activities in here, but sometimes free writing does help. Sometimes I mean, this is something that I practice sometimes. I walk into my classroom and say, like, what do you and show a picture. So what do you think the topic of today's lesson is? Instead of having them just shout back and say, like, it's going to be about, for example, mega cities, etc., etc., I will say, write it down. So write it down. What do you think the topic of the day's lesson is? Just write it down. Okay, so get them into that, and they know that this writing is not going to be graded. The teachers are not going to look at it. So the stress of having to get it all right is not there. The stress is not there. So that sort of gets them into the habit of, like, you know, getting hold of the pen and just scribble something on the paper. Sometimes if there's a reading passage and you want to check understanding of some of the elements in the reading passage, so just get them write it down. So say, for example, what happened in, for example, 1955 according to the text, and instead of giving the answer verbally, they can just have it written down. So that sort of gets them into the sort of just habit of getting everything written down. Flipped classrooms is another idea, because flipped classrooms means they have everything online. They have the whole lesson is there online. All the resources are there. If it's a reading text, it is there. They read it, they search for more information, they answer all the questions, and when they come to the classroom, it's all about writing. And it's all about correcting the mistakes. It's all about giving them feedback. So for me as a teacher, it's utilizing that classroom time for writing and writing only, because they have learned the difficult words at home, they have practiced the difficult words at home, they have put the difficult words in sentences, especially when I get a tool to help me, like Padlet, for example, because I can monitor all that. I can monitor the learning of the new language on Padlet. And when they come to the classroom, they are all ready for the next step, which is writing about the topic they've learned and using all the language they've learned in the writing task. So that is probably flipped classrooms can be a very good way of doing that, especially when we get tools to help us. Project-based learning. Project-based learning gets them into some research habits, like looking for information, synthesizing information from different sources, also evaluation of information, what is relevant to my topic, what is not relevant to my topic. And because when they work together as a group, it does improves their rapport and dynamics as a group. And it does create some kind of energy between them as a group, definitely. And also it's going to enhance their critical reading skills. It's gonna help them learn about aspects like plagiarism, because obviously they come to us and they write, and when we give them blackboard tasks, they write, and there are some issues about plagiarism there. But if they get trained on that through project-based learning, if they get trained about don't just copy, change the words, paraphrasing, so that you don't plagiarize, etc., etc. They get to learn about all these practices and concepts before they advance in their academic progress. So they get to learn about all that. Actually, they get to synthesize information from different sources, not just copy from just one single source. They get to learn about paraphrasing. They get to learn about getting the spelling and sentence structure correct. They get to learn to work together as a group and learn from each other and share knowledge and transfer knowledge to each other. So projects are really good way of learning writing as a group, learning and helping each other as a group. And it's also, as I said, we are social beings as humans. As humans, we are social beings, and we learn a lot from each other. The potential, as Vygotsky puts it, it is the notion of ZPD, and I know most of you will know that. The potential of us learning in a group is more actually, and is higher than the potential of us learning by ourselves. So some of the suggested tasks. According to Bean, exploratory writing tasks cue students to avoid the burden and stress of organized and structured writing. This is what we mean by free writing. Get into the classroom. There are some examples I'm going to show, but sometimes we get into the classroom and we say, like, if you wanna call your mother, for example, right now. You wanna tell your mother that what you are enjoying about this class, for example. So instead of calling her and telling her all that, write it down on a piece of paper and show her maybe later on. So that is just free writing. They know that the teacher's not going to look at it. They know that it is the stress of grading and the using the red pen for marking mistakes is not there. So that psychological barrier is not there. So they write freely, and then later on probably they will get back to the writing and maybe modify their mistakes and structure the writing in a better way, etc., etc. Also, writing linked to specific context or reading materials. We give them a task, for example, read about famous people, for example, some famous people, like for example Oprah Winfrey. In the books I think there are some units about that, famous philanthropists, for example. And when they read about those people, then they can think of similar people. They can think of similar people. They can research information about those people, and they can write about those people. So we create a context for them. They can write about the history of Rome, for example, and then write a task, and then research about the history of Jeddah or history of Riyadh, and then write a task, and write a text about it. So providing a context is something that is really, really important, because the context will help them relate to their own experiences. Maybe it can remind them, maybe the context can remind them of a video or movie they've seen before about the history of Rome or something. And they can use the information they got from the video and relate to the information they've learned from the text, and then put all that together and use all that in the writing task, probably. Yeah, so having authentic reading materials and having context is really, really important. And of course, I cannot repeat it maybe much enough. Maybe collaborative writing tasks is something that's really important. Collaborative, working together. So exploratory writing tasks, ungraded, untimed, unstructured tasks, through which students explore how good the writing is and how good their ideas are. So putting ideas on paper. So but we give them the cues, we give them the hints, we give them a task, we tell them do this and do that, and then just put it in writing. I'm not going to look at it, I'm not going to grade it. Forget about the spelling mistakes, just write. Getting them into the habit of writing. Free writing, like write how you feel right now. So write about how you feel right now. What elements of this particular classroom that you're enjoying right now? How can I make my teaching better? Just put it in writing. Put it in writing. Yeah. Sometimes I ask them to give me advice, so they can do that. Give me advice. How can I make my teaching better? And they feel that that actually it is actually excellent, because it gives them a sense of responsibility. Gives them a sense like, yeah, we can give advice, we can give some advice to the teacher. She needs us, the teacher needs us, so we can do that. So if they can put it in writing, then that is like catching two birds with the same stone. It will be like really, really constructive. Write a message to your friend asking him or her to get you lunch. So how are you going to do that? Yeah. Or write what you think about today's lesson. So what are your expectations of today's lesson? What is it going to be about? What are you going to learn? What new ideas are you going to go home with, do you think? Just put it in writing. All right. But if we get them like, and sometimes I think like, if I can get them, have a diary, for example, have like a learning diary or learning logs or something like that, that is really good in improving their own writing, because it can be highly personalized, because it's about their own feelings, it's about their own ideas, it's about their own thinking. And at the same time, it can be like giving me some feedback and about my own teaching. And it can also be a very good tool for me to sort of identify learning needs and work on that. So especially when I get like an online tool like Padlet, I keep repeating Padlet because it's really, really good, because I've used it many times, and it does really help, because you don't want to go home with like loads and loads and piles of papers. But if you use an electronic application, it will really help you. So if we can get them have like learning diaries, electronic learning diaries like pretty much like portfolios, it will help us, and it will also help them definitely, because they can just jot down their ideas and feelings and thoughts about a particular lesson. What have you learned today? What do you need to work on? How do you think the teacher is going to help you? How do you think the teacher can help you, etc.? Can you give some advice to the teacher, etc.? So that is all can fall into the category of free writing, and it gets them into writing. It takes away from their minds that idea of writing being stressful, being having to think of ideas. I don't have ideas, being having to think of the language, being having to think of the accurate verbs and accurate grammar and accurate vocab, etc., etc. It takes away all that burden, and it creates sort of novice writers. And we never know what comes out of that. It can, we never know. It can create creative writers. We don't know. Contextual writing, the context can be physical, The context can describe a city, describe Jeddah in terms of buildings, interesting places to visit. Imagine that you're writing an email to a friend who's coming from abroad. Tell her about Jeddah, which places to go to, etc., etc., which nice restaurants to go to. The context can be situational. Something happened to you, something happened to a friend a scary experience, a happy experience, something that started badly and ended happily, etc., etc. And we are mostly surprised by how much they have to tell us, how much they have to tell us. They come to classrooms with loads of life experiences. So if we utilize all that and use all that in a nice way, I think, but in a nice supportive way, instead of putting a burden like write about an experience that happened to you in the past and just leave them to it. Um, it, uh, it's better than it is actually not as constructive as if we just tell them like relate to an experience that happened to you or a friend, and I'm not going to look at that, something like that. And the context can also be cultural. Write about an event you have been to, write about, and they are so much into learning about other nations' cultures. This particular generation are so much curious, and technology is helping them. The technology works so well for them. So write about somebody might. My own students tell me about the culture, the Korean cultures, and the Chinese culture, the Turkish culture. They see all that in movies and films. They learn about all that. They know a lot. And so if you ask them to write about a certain culture, they have all the information. They just need our assistance with the language probably, or maybe sort of they just need us to distance ourselves a little bit away from what they write and just leave them to it. And then probably it will help them. Definitely it will help them. They go and look for the words to help them expressing their own ideas, etc. um, yeah, some activities for collaborative writing, probably some sentence and paragraphs cut-ups, put them in pairs. And we do have tasks like that in the book actually. We have like sentences that are not ordered, and they have to put the words in the correct order to make sentences. So they do have that in the book, and because the task is repeated, maybe at some point they will get bored with it. But if we have like cut-ups and then we put them in pairs, they will be maybe interested and maybe more enthusiastic about putting the words in the correct order to make sentences, especially if those cut-ups are nicely colored, etc. If they're nicely colored, if we're using cards, maybe sometimes they will be very excited to do that. And the paragraph cut-ups is really good in teaching them how to put paragraphs in order, and maybe the concept of a topic sentence, concluding sentence, etc., the supporting sentences, etc. So the cut-ups are really useful if you can do that, and if you can put them in groups, and then then they can work together to put that on. And funny crosswords, names of different items inside the classroom, names of new words in the text, etc., etc. Chain stories. I like chain stories because it will tell you how creative they are. So probably a group will write the first sentence of a story. They will start the story and then they fold it. They will fold the paper and pass it on to the next group. And maybe you give them a topic. You just give them a topic. Yeah, you give them a topic, or maybe the story itself, you give them a topic of the story. For example, the story is about um, this brave young man who did this and did saved many people from an earthquake, etc., etc. And then you get them going, you get them starting. So the first group writes a sentence about the same story, the second group writes another sentence, and then it is fun when you unfold the paper and you can all read the story and see how it sticks to each other, if it does or it doesn't, and which parts need modification, etc., etc. But just it keeps them thinking and writing. It keeps them thinking and writing. So metacognitive skills get also practiced. Posters, they like that a lot. That they like writing posters because if we put them in groups and ask them to write posters, and then then as a group they present their posters, to the rest of the class. They like doing that a lot because it brings the whole group to the front of the class, and then they become the focus of attention. They like that, and they feel very proud about their work and presenting their own work to the rest of the class. Especially when we help them with colors and sticky notes and other materials, then they can make it nice and colorful and make it something nice to look at. They'll be really proud to present their own work to the classroom. So writing posters and they can also research the topics to write on the posters. I do remember my students wrote about Nelson Mandela, like famous historical characters. Some time ago, this happened some time ago. Some groups in my class, they wrote about Nelson Mandela and Princess Diana and other, and some local philanthropists like Sheikh Al-Rajhi and Sheikh Prince Walid bin Talal, etc. So they wrote very nice, and they got nice pictures about those people from different places, and next to their homes and next to the cars and next to the people they help, etc., etc. So they actually created very nice works and presented all that to the rest of their classes, and they felt really like this ownership of their own work. Sorry about that. So it gives them ownership because this is their own work, and they're presenting it to the rest of the group, the rest of the class. So they collaborate really nicely in writing because they get, each and everyone gets to her own or his or her own phone and gets information from Google, and then writes some sentences, and then they put these sentences together to create a poster. Spelling walls, and some people call them graffiti walls or something like that. So you get like flip charts, and you stick the charts to the walls, and then they can, and then as a group or as pairs, you dictate some words, and then they write these words on their charts on the wall, and then maybe afterwards they can correct their own mistakes, and they can correct each other's mistakes, spelling mistakes. So it's a good chance for them to learn from each other and correct each other. It's an opportunity for peer assessment and self-assessment. Also, when we give them texts on various topics, like environmental topics, they know a lot about global warming. They know a lot about environmental issues, pollution. They know a lot about all this. So if we give them the topics, or maybe ask them to choose the topics themselves to talk about an environmental problem, and suggest some ways to to improve it. So give them time to go and research it, find information about it from the internet or from other sources, from YouTube, etc., and write about these topics. So, but put them in groups and give them the chance to work together and collaborate with each other. I do remember one of the groups, and one of my groups last year, they presented about one of the prominent Saudi figures, Dr. Ghazal Qusaybi, and they brought very nice information. And at the end, they felt so proud about the work, and actually they recommended the rest of the class to go and read about such prominent figures. That's what they did, actually, and it came from them. So they felt so proud about what they did and how they have achieved on that particular task. So, as teachers, what to consider when we design writing tasks, and I still invite my audience to suggest some ideas. Obviously, identification of learning needs is very important because we don't know, they are individuals, they learn at different paces. We don't know about their previous learning experiences. We don't know about the challenges and difficulties that they face in writing, etc. And so analyzing their needs is something that it's important as a starting point. Clarification of goals. So today we're going to do this and this and that. So I think it's important. I think it's an important pedagogical practice to walk inside the classroom and write your goals on the board, and say today we're gonna practice this and this and that, and of course explain all that, and make sure that everybody understands it. And also meaningful writing experiences. we shouldn't ask them to write about something that is not relevant to them, and something that they are not going to meet in their future academic or professional lives. It has to be relevant to them. It has to be related to their own studies and their own experiences and their own learning needs. And it will be meaningless actually to ask them to write about the space when they are not studying about the space, and they're not going to study about the space in the future. The tasks, we have to think and plan and consider tasks that can boost interaction among the students themselves and between the students and the learning materials. So we need them to write about something that we should give them tasks that will sort of make them having to go back to the reading materials over and over again, because for information and for structure, and also they will need to know what kind of language they'll have to use in particular tasks. And also tasks to boost metacognitive and critical thinking skills, because these skills are very important. They have to synthesize information, they have to paraphrase, they have to evaluate the information, which information is relevant to them, which information is not relevant to the task. They have to be able to, be able to do all that. And also, we need to give them the task that is that can mirror their future academic and professional writing tasks. So, if I know that, for example, I teach students communication. Sorry, not communication students. I know that at some point they'll have to write, for example, pieces of news, articles maybe, and sometimes they have to report, and sometimes they have. So I know that they have to know the language of the TV and the language of newspapers and the language of journalism. So I have to make sure that the writing tasks are relevant to all that, and they have got the language to be able to do all that. So we have to sort of create some kind of tasks that are relevant to what they're going to do in the future. And I know that, for example, in the future they'll have to write like certain genres. For example, they'll have to write assignments, and they'll have to write, for example, they'll have to write articles for publication. They'll have to write, for example, research or thesis, etc., etc. So I'll have to have all that in. I'll have to, bear all that in mind when I'm organizing tasks for them. Okay, so assessment and feedback, obviously, if the teacher, if I think like I'm gonna assess each and every student's work is gonna be unrealistic, although we do it, definitely. Sometimes we know we have to create time for it, and we have to make time for it. But peer assessment and self-assessment, if we sort of train them and give them the skills to do that, then it's going to take a lot of burden off our shoulders, and it will make them responsible for their own learning. And also electronic portfolios like Padlet, for example. Padlet can be an electronic portfolio because it allows them to build up their works, and it will also allow me as a teacher to go back and read and identify the learning needs, etc. So it works as an electronic portfolio. Electronic portfolios are really, really good because they can also go back and see their own mistakes and rectify their own mistakes. And they can go back and, it gives them a sense of achievement because they can see what they have achieved and how far they've come and how much progress they've made. And it gives them a sense of, good sense of like having done something really great. But at the same time, it will help them identify their own weaknesses in writing and sort of try to help themselves or ask the help from the teacher, or probably, find help somewhere else. So technical tools and applications as Padlet, if we use all that, it's gonna help us a lot as teachers. It will help us a lot, definitely. And it gives them, because Padlet, gives them the pleasure of learning. It gives them a pleasure of learning, because they can, because it's linked to the internet as well, it's linked to the web. Actually, they can search for information, they can search for meanings of words, they can also get words from, for example, if we train them to use the online Cambridge Dictionary, for example, they can, revert to that. If we train them not to use Google Translate, but use like English dictionaries and that are available online, so they can also use that as well. They can get pictures, they can get pictures from the internet, and it will help them a lot, definitely. So yeah, using technical tools will help them and also help us to deal with such large classes. But large classes are not always doomed as like something negative. There are some bright sides of, there is a bright side for the whole thing. The way I thought about it, having a lot of students, having a lot of human beings inside my classroom, that means a lot of energy, many ideas, many life experiences, a lot of creativity, a lot of knowledge to share and transfer to each other, etc., etc. So a lot of skills, and this will enhance our own knowledge and their knowledge, and it will give them an opportunity to sort of help and support and foster a sense of community and care for each other, definitely. So it will help them, improve as a group, definitely. And the dynamics also will be really, really positive. So having a lot of people inside the classroom means a lot exchanging a lot of new ideas, everyday new knowledge, everyday new words, everyday new learning, a lot of progress, etc., etc. So the energy, and those people are young, so utilizing all this energy will be highly productive, definitely. And yeah, I've come to the end of my presentation. So any comments and questions from my audience? These are my references.
You did a great job, Dr. Sumaya, mashallah, as usual. Very, very informative, very valuable, very useful workshop. For participants, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, you can use your mic or you can use the chat box. If you are interested in getting the certificate, please fill in this form, ladies and gentlemen, and make sure that you fill it with correct and valid information, especially name and email. Thank you all for attending. Thank you all for your presence. These are the three links: the workshop evaluation form, how to make online appointments, and the YouTube channel, where you can find a lot of previous workshops from the Academic Writing Center and its team.